It's the beautiful thing about the folk process is sometimes you remember things wrong. It's really easy to write this off as him just moving his hands around. She kind of does this really funky rhythm. Just love the way these chords talk to each other. Oh my god, I can barely do it. The amazing thing about Freight Train is you can just play the basic chords. Nothing fancy. A simple fingerstyle pattern will do, and it's gonna sound pretty much like Freight Train. I mean, you could even strum. You can play bar chords. It doesn't matter. It's still gonna sound like Freight Train and perfect for the Campfire. That's to do level 1. Level 1, you have to know the basic chords. So what are the basic chords to Freight Train? So take those day 1 chords you know. You got C major, you got G major, you got F major, which might be more of like a day 2 chord, I guess, but you know. Then you got E major as well, right? And they're all gonna work. They're all gonna get you the sound of Freight Train with one little variation to each of those chords. Check it out. You got C major, and then you just put your pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E string, right? And then you got the melody note. Then open up that high E string to your normal C chord. Then move to G and alter it to this chord called G7, right? And then you got G again to G7. Moving back to C, and then do that same thing where you got 3rd fret on the high E, back to open E. You literally just played almost the entire melody with these simple chord shapes. Then you got an E, you gotta move it to E7, and then you gotta go to F. Now F, you could do a number of things. You could play that F, right? You could even just play these middle 3 strings. I do the middle 3 strings with my thumb, also ratchet it down to the low E string, but it's just really playing this small little F shape with my thumb over. Or you could play the bar chord F if you know that one. Any of them are going to work for this basic version. Then we go back to C and G and C. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy about it. Get a simple fingerstyle pattern going, and it sounds great. Again, you could fingerstyle or strum. Thumb chord, bar chord, doesn't matter. Kind of the next level of this is checking out Elizabeth Cotten's version, who wrote this tune, and if you're already a friend of the channel, you know this tune well. But let's just set this up with the kind of like the origins of this tune, and then we'll see where this tune can go. Because that's the point of really studying the masters, is to see where the stuff came from, to get a really, really firm foundation, and then to take it somewhere entirely new. Notice she's playing a lot more notes, right? A lot more notes than the Campfire version. On a guitar that's upside down and backwards. So there's also that. To contend with. But we'll start with just the basic melody, something that's achievable for us today. You can decide if you want to completely reinvent your guitar style after this. The good news is you can add all these melody notes to these basic chord frames without changing anything. So you've got the high E on the 3rd fret to the open E. Then you go to the 3rd fret on the B and 1st fret on the B. That's over your C chord. Then when you go to the G, open B, 3rd fret on the E, 1st fret on the E. We're going to do that again. 3rd fret, 1st fret, now open E. 3rd fret on the B, bring you to the C. 3rd fret on the E, open E. So that's the basic melody using common chord shapes. But Libba doesn't actually use common chord shapes. She uses something you could call cotton chords, if you wanted to call it something at all. But she kind of uses some really unique voicings that we should talk about. Also, she adds some really out-of-the-box rhythms here. Something to know, I already have a whole tutorial of Freight Train on YouTube. You can check it out here if you haven't seen it yet. I also have a slow play-along and a tab over on the Patreon. You can check all that out if you want. So all of it does, but the effect is really cool. She takes her C chord and moves the root down to the E string, which is the 5th of the chord. And it's a really cool sound, and especially when you move the G, because that G is in the bass the whole time. Now, she does something really cool over this G chord that I never noticed for years, but she kind of does this really funky rhythm. It's like a quarter, 8th quarter, 8th quarter, right? Check this out. Now, if feel like a lot of us use Freight Train as kind of a template or a benchmark for personal expression, which is a great way to utilize the whole folk music canon. Folk music to me is it's kind of, individual expression on a communal theme, right? And I think Freight Train is a great example of that. And a really great example is Chet Atkins, and this is level 3. So good. Now Chet, doesn't he look good too? I do want to say that video inspired the blue flannel again today. Now Chet is a thumb picker, right? So it's good to have the thumb pick. It's good to have the thumb pick, right? Also, it doesn't hurt. Don't anybody get mad at me now. It doesn't hurt to use something like this. Now I've been kind of checking out this guitar. It's not mine. It's just hanging out here for a minute. It is for sale, actually. If somebody's looking to buy this guitar, it's for sale. A buddy of mine is selling it. It's the Joe Pass signature model, but it's not really Joe Pass's signature, although it could pass for it. It's pretty believable. It's great. It's a great guitar, and it's great for this style. And while it's here, I'm kind of checking out what's possible with the thumb pick on this guitar. Now, I like Chet's version because it simplifies certain things. It also pulls from the original in certain places, but it also takes things into new territory. So he does start out, which is like a basic C chord. He doesn't use that C over G, but when he moves to G7, check this out. Like that seems like a wild and crazy way to play a G7 chord. But if you look into the original version of Freight Train, which again, check out that tutorial if you haven't, she plays G7 kind of similar to that later on in the tune. The next chord though is where this really turns into level 3. Check this out. So you got this D minor moving to G before we get back to C. Now, the melody changes. When you grab that D minor, you're grabbing a new note. The melody is altered from this reharmonized D minor chord. But it's worth every bit of the change because what it does to the tune is it's so beautiful. Love it or hate it, right? But I think it's beautiful. There's also like a guitar solo in this version that I actually tabbed out with the slow play along. I have the verse and the solo tabbed out over on the Patreon. You should check that out. Chet is one of the most influential players the world ever knew, and he inspired probably kind of our token acoustic rock star, if we were to have one today. One of the greatest inspirations to Tommy Emmanuel. Look at his version of Freight Train here. That's just a nice version that makes me want to put this away. Grab my acoustic again. Yeah, so Tommy, I mean, he's one of the best, examples and like an outcome, a result of the Chet Atkins thing, and taking it to new places with, his own charisma and pop sensibility. He actually cites Chet Atkins of playing the song in the key of E.
So I believe when I first heard Chet Atkins play this song, it was in E. Up here.
Which we just checked out that version, it's not an E. It's the beautiful thing about the folk process is sometimes you remember things wrong, right? Maybe he never did play it in E, but it inspired Tommy to figure it out in E. There's a beautiful thing about misremembering things, it creates, there's necessity that it creates of like, I need to play it like Chet did, and I think Chet played it in E, so let's figure it out, right? Who knows? Maybe if Tommy ever sees this video, it can kind of spur his memory. Tell us all where and when he played it in E. But either way, it's very cool in E. It's also a cool key change to check out because E's kind of the special chord of the song, right? It's that special sauce that makes Freight Train sound so beautiful because it's kind of the chord that doesn't belong in the key. But nevertheless, it's really cool in E. Now, Tommy is one of the most well-appreciated players of this school, but there's a total underappreciated dude who took this stuff to an almost impossible level, and this is level 5. Or 500, really. We just kind of jump up to 500. This is Lenny Breau. Lenny took what is already happening with Freight Train, a moving melody, borrowed chords, right? That E major chord is kind of a borrowed chord, and then taking the expanded harmony that Chet gave us to an almost impossible place. You know, there's some really nice, like, gentle stuff in here. And then it just kind of gets, like, what is this? I don't know what a lot of these chords would be called. I don't know if Lenny knew what they would be called, right? He probably could figure out a way, but he was just kind of creating some really out-of-the-box voice leading, and I really like it. Like, I just love the way these chords talk to each other. Oh my god, I can barely do it. I mean, it's really easy to write this off as him just moving his hands around. But if you listen to the voice leading of that, it's so good. Woo! Gonna need a little stretch break. Anyway, I just love hearing people's personal expressions on a tune like Freight Train, a tune that's so well known, but has so many untouched possibilities. And the dude to carry the torch of that today is Julian Lage. So I'll have a video linked here of Julian Lage's version of Freight Train. I have the whole thing on Patreon, which is insane. That was an uphill battle to climb. Of course, you can check out Chet Atkins and Elizabeth Cotten's. All that's over on the Patreon. We will see you wherever we see you, and have fun messing around. That is the whole point in the end, isn't it?